Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 509 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, Ashley says words funny. But that's not why she's on the show. But that is why this episode is called Ruff, Ruff, Ruff. If you're from Wisconsin, you're dying laughing right now. The rest of you are kind of confused. You are all in for a treat because I have Ashley for you today. Ashley is an adult living with type 1 diabetes, and I don't really need to tell you much more about this, other than really terrific episode. The people who come on this show just give and give and give when they come on, and Ashley is no exception to that rule. You're going to hear a great conversation with a lovely person who has a freaking terrific sense of humor. It's just a lot of fun talking with Ashley. While you're listening, do me a favor, okay? Remember this. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Also, if you're listening online, please consider listening and following or subscribing in a podcast app. There are a lot of great free podcast apps. You can find them all at juiceboxpodcast.com. All that you need, just go there, say, oh, I use Apple, click. I use Android, click, and you'll find one. Don't be listening online if you are. I mean, if you love it, don't let me stop you, but get an app, subscribe. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Diabetes Pro Tip episodes of the Juicebox Podcast and the Defining Diabetes episodes. They both can be found at diabetesprotip.com or at juiceboxpodcast.com, or you can go right into your podcast app and search for them. Juicebox Podcast Diabetes Pro Tip, and they'll pop right up. The Pro Tip series begins at episode 210. I'm not sure where the Defining Diabetes episodes start. Again, probably best just to go to diabetesprotip.com to find them. But these are the management-specific episodes that you probably hear people talking about all the time. If you haven't started listening yet, I really hope you give them a try. Thanks so much to the sponsors. I'm the sponsor. I'm thanking myself. All right, let's get started with Ashley.
I'm really glad we can make it work. I felt so bad and stupid at the same time.
Why?
That first time around. Well, when I got my time zones mixed up.
Do you know that happens a lot though, right?
Okay. I'm like, okay, hopefully I'm not the only one.
Well,
because I felt so stupid and I was getting so much crap from family and stuff.
Wait, people in your family were giving you problems for getting time zone things wrong
about
being on a podcast?
Yeah.
Why did they care even?
Because they like to give me a hard time.
Why do they care, do you think?
I don't know.
Oh, by the way, you're being recorded, so be careful
now,
in case you're about to badmouth your mom or something like that.
I don't have the best mouth, so I will say that in advance.
Wait, you don't have the best mouth
or
the best mom? Which? Say it again.
Yeah, words.
Oh.
I don't have the best mouth.
Oh.
Not the cleanest mouth.
Oh, that's what I thought you meant, but then I thought you might have said mom, and I was like, is she about to dump on her mother? This is going to be a great episode. All right, hold on.
No.
So you're saying you might get a little cursy at some point?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, my 8-year-old reminds me of that. Mom. Yeah, so.
Well, what's your stance on the cursing? Is it just, so I'll tell you what, I'll make this easy on you. I'll give you my stance on cursing.
Okay.
I don't know an adult who I trust who doesn't curse. So
that is a really good point.
I make a point of thinking that eventually everyone's going to curse. Whether they let us hear it or not will be another thing. Right?
I guess I don't know. I am how you see it, and I guess I just don't pretend with anything. So I try not to be all.
There are no pretenses with you, Ashley? We are not pretending to be anything we are not? I like that. Yeah. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, well, pretty much.
Now that we've all come to terms to the fact that you're going to say mother at some point during the conversation.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Well, not so much that.
Oh, really?
It's more
so
like,
this is interesting. Go. What will you say?
Well, just like the F word probably a lot.
Do you want to say it now to get it off your chest, and I'll just bleep it out? Because you have a funny accent. So
yeah, well, I'm sure I will fucking swear at some point. So.
You sound like a Canadian who like jumped on the back of somebody from Chicago or something like that. And you guys are talking through the same mouth right at this point. But you're what, in Minnesota?
Yeah, southern Minnesota.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Southern. Is it important to say southern Minnesota?
Well, Mankato, Minnesota. I don't know if you've heard of it or not.
No, of course I haven't. But that's not the point. The point is that I wonder, like, you were so specific. If you asked me what state I was from, I would say New Jersey. I would never think to say what portion of New Jersey I was in. I was wondering if there's like some relevance to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like as far as like, like Duluth, way northern Minnesota, I feel like it's a little, like the dynamics is a little bit different.
Actually, I feel like if I press you a little bit, I can get you to absolutely trash the central and northern part of Minnesota. Is that correct?
Well.
Say nothing. Say nothing. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce
no
yourself?
Comment,
introduce yourself. I think definitely leave out your last name. And
yeah.
And
I was just going to ask you, so how much information, I mean, because I don't care. I really don't give a shit, like how much info, you know what I mean?
Oh,
that
I would just
share, because that's why I'm here to.
Yeah, no, I think that if you're going to be like, listen, if you're going to share something that you wish no one else knew, by the way, I've been recording the whole time. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah, that's totally fine.
All right, good. Okay,
yeah,
so
I don't care. Yeah.
I'm leaving all this in. I'm fascinated. So if seriously, if you're going to say something, I don't know how to gauge it, because people have said some rather shocking things to me in the courses of these conversations. So I think if you're going to come out and say that your neighbor runs a meth lab, I would just use your first name. And I might,
right.
And
no.
right?
Oh God. No,
yeah.
no, nothing like that.
Right. So just go ahead, tell me your name, and then I'll ask some questions, and you'll make a bunch of noises that sound vaguely Wisconsin-y, Minnesota-y, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
sounds good.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So my name's Ashley. I'm 36. I have been type 1 it'll be 28 years in February. This coming February.
28.
And I have 3 boys that keep me very busy.
I would imagine.
Yeah. 8, 5, and 3. We have 2 dogs.
Wow.
And my husband.
Wow.
So,
hold on.
Yeah.
Slow down. So you threw me off when you said you've had diabetes for 28 years, because I started doing the math on when you had your 8-year-old, because I felt like you had an 8-year-old. And so I was like, oh, she was 28 when she had her oldest. And then you said I've had diabetes for 28 years. And then my brain fried for a second. And then I felt like you told me that there are 3 children, yourself, a couple of dogs, and a man living in your home.
Yes, that's correct.
2, 3, I'm counting.
That's
4,
correct.
5, 6. There are 7 living things in your home. Do you have any parakeets?
Yes.
Gerbils, hamsters, anything like that?
No, God, no. No, I don't think they would survive in our house with my 3 crazy boys.
You're saying something too small would just be pummeled by your children.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. We're doing well. 28 years. When did you meet your husband?
Oh, 2008.
See, you started talking in years, then you like years ago, and then you went to the actual years.
So 12 years ago.
12 years ago, right?
Yep.
And you've had diabetes for 28 years. Doing the math.
We got a house 9 months later, got married a year later, and
house first?
Kids right after that. Yeah, I know. Shocking.
It's probably because it's cold there. You can't even go on a date until you've...
it's not really bad right now. It's actually pretty decent. It's supposed to be like 55 today, I think. And my 5-year-old wanted to wear shorts to school, so that was a big dilemma, changing clothes and fighting with him this morning. No, when we got our house, it was like March, and it was pretty cold. We were in an apartment at the time, and we were kind of transitioning into our house and updating it and stuff before we actually moved in.
Do you mind if I pick into your life a little bit?
Oh, that's just fine.
Cool. So 2 questions pop into my mind about getting a house before you get married. It made me feel like either the 2 of you were a little transient in your lives, or you just knew you were going to get married, or literally you wanted to see if this guy could afford to put you in a house before you were willing to marry him. I'm wondering what's going on.
I think it was more like we met and then everything just kind of moved quickly. We both were on the same page where we were in our life. And he's younger than me too. So,
Ashley.
Yeah. So
how much
younger? I think we were just ready and yeah.
How much younger?
A year and a half.
Oh, that's not that much younger.
Yeah. No.
Ashley, I'm wondering if what you're telling me is you met a man, you liked the sex, and you thought you would just skip ahead to the rest of it. Is this what happened, or does he have a good job? What is it we're talking about right now? Or do you have a good job? Has he hooked you in? What's going on?
Well, we had a strong interest in music. That was one of the things.
Okay.
I think we were both, I don't even know how to say it. We were both like, not angry people, but just like we had hard times growing up. Both of us, we could relate, as far as like going through certain situations, things like that. And we were just kind of done with the bullshit and just,
veterans
start moving forward.
Yeah. Veterans of the same war.
Not a vet. Yeah.
But you'd grown up in a way that was similar to each other. You knew what each other had been through.
Yeah.
Found it. Okay. I like this. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you killing something right now? What was that noise?
Oh, my pump, it's
okay.
always bragging on me. It's
What kind of pump? Because I didn't recognize
it's the tandem.
Oh, okay.
T-Slim.
Oh, that's an irritating noise it makes there.
Yeah, it beeps and I don't think I can put it on vibrate.
Don't worry about it. I just thought it literally sounded like you were dragging a metal chair across the stone floor.
Oh, no.
I was like, Ashley, sit still. We're doing
No, it's just, my morning. I struggle probably the most in the morning.
How
my
so?
Biggest struggle.
You get like, well, first, do you listen to the podcast much?
I do. And I will be honest, I haven't lately because I did every day when I worked. I was a refill nurse, an RN. So I would sit at my desk. I could have my headphones in, and the work I did, I was able to, listen to something. And my doctor, had mentioned you a couple years ago, and I started listening, and I would listen to you every day. And then I stopped working when the pandemic happened, and my kids were, then at home for school. And so
yeah, I hear you.
So then I listen to you when I like work out or I'm on the treadmill or something like that.
Well, we got to get this pandemic under control so that you can listen to more of my podcasts.
Well, that's
I need
right now
downloads,
it's pretty rough here, but as far as like this, our numbers and just it's spreading like wildfire.
Yeah, it's tough. It is really a tough time in that part of the country. Also, you did something that I was really hoping you would do. My brother married a woman from Wisconsin, and I love it when she says Ruff. Can you just say it one more time for me?
Ruff.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. What does your dog say?
Our dog?
Yeah, when your dog makes noise, what is the noise he makes?
Well, I have a senior dog.
You're losing my point. Does he go Ruff? Or how does that sound?
Oh, yeah. No. I was totally not following you there.
That's okay.
And
go ahead.
Yeah. It takes me a while to catch on sometimes.
So we'll start over. What noise does a dog make?
Ruff. Ruff. Yeah.
And work when it's difficult is?
Ruff.
And the thing on top of your house is called a
roof.
You got that one. It's fantastic. I love this accent. I'm sorry. We might never get back to the diabetes.
That's all right.
No.
That's all right.
Well,
it's okay.
Well, so seriously, so you had to stop working when you say because of the pandemic, you're saying because work left your off, like you lost your job?
No,
or because of the kids?
I eventually did. So long story short, I was recommended, at that time, everything was like a little more, we didn't know as much as far as the virus. And my doctor was just like, with your history, with as far as your diabetes, like I'm in good health, but in the past with respiratory illnesses, I've had it, like I didn't tolerate it as well, if you want to say. And so I guess he just said, I think you should pull your kids, you should be at home, you're high risk. And my job was recommending too, if you're a high risk employee, you should be, a little bit safer and isolating yourself. So I did that. And I think I was then on like like a short-term disability thing for, what is it? FMLA for 12 weeks. And then my daycare had closed as well during that time. And then I didn't have any care for my kids. And so I just eventually ended up losing my job. But honestly, I started school back to college in May. So I thought, well, if there's anything that's good that's going to come from this pandemic, it'll be, just getting a further education, like as far as just going further with it, which I've always wanted to do. So
what'd you go back to school for?
Better time than now to do it. And so my bachelor's in nursing that I'm working on right now.
Oh, that's so cool. So you were a refill nurse before, which meant you were, explain that a little bit to me.
So is it kind of a unique position? I have been a nurse since 2011. Actually 2010. I was an LPN for a year. I went back to school. During that time for that year, I worked at the local clinic here, and I did a variety of things. I floated everywhere. So pediatrics, cardiology, family practice. And then I went back to school. I got my RN degree. And during that time, it was like a month. I was looking for a job, and it was out at the state hospital, just a town outside of here. And it was more like mental health. So like people off the street, as far as like being mentally unstable, things like that. I had found out I was pregnant a week prior to that. And then so my husband was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable you being out there and doing this line of work. And so I was only out there for a short time. And then I ended up being hired through a local clinic here in town, being a refill nurse. And we actually did mail resupplies. So mailing out medications to patients.
Wow. I'm wondering, is your husband just going to get you pregnant so many times that you're physically incapable of leaving the house because of the pure weight of the children hanging off of your arms?
No. It was just, I think it was like all the timing of it. And then it was our first kid. And then
I understand. It makes sense. It really does. And now so you're going to go back now and try to get what degree?
Well, my bachelor's in nursing. I should finish by June. That's like my graduation date. But with our situation now, Friday is the last day of school for my kids. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to be home. So that kind of allows, it'll be hard, like homeschooling them, doing my schoolwork, just trying to stay on top of everything, trying to set up care for my mom too. Sorry, my pump is being annoying.
It's okay. The noises that Tandem makes is like a sales pitch for the Omnipod. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it's got all kinds of, I think every system has their weird good noises. And bad.
Yeah, well, they all make. You're 100% right too. Is that I don't think any insulin pump is perfect, and there are ones that fit you better. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Do you know this episode is going to be called Ruff, Roof?
Oh God. Because of my Minnesota accent.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter why
I thought I would get some for that.
Well, you are. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah. So anyhow, it'll be interesting the next, I'd say, till this pandemic's over, when it will be over, but a lot's kind of up in the air. But my end goal is to be in endocrinology, diabetes care. That's my main purpose, I guess, other than my kids, other than being a mom,
right?
Is what I would love to do is just help other people
with diabetes. Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about that, but before I do, my last question remaining from what you just said is, you stopped working because you felt like you were at a higher risk. Do you still feel like you're at a higher risk because you have type 1?
I don't know. I had a visit with my doctor. I see him every 3 months, and I don't know. It seems like now it's just so up in the air. Like as far as how it affects everybody, mm-hmm. It affects everyone differently. You see perfectly normal, healthy people, getting this, and then they're not okay. Yeah. The next second, it just, none of it makes sense. There's no pattern to it. It's just, So the reality of everything, I guess I feel like at times I am, just because with any kind of virus that I've had, I'm very, like, I don't even know how to say it, sensitive to any kind of illness.
Mm-hmm.
I can always tell my blood sugar will go up and my, demand for insulin is like super high. It like doubles. And so I guess that would be my main concern, is like the sugars and being all wacky and doing crazy things.
Well, no, I agree with you. I know that in my heart that feels the same way. It's like there's part of you that feels like, okay. I mean, we kind of live our lives pretty, I guess, similarly to before. We don't go out as much, obviously. There's, I haven't been in a restaurant in a very long time. There are stores that make you call ahead for appointments now if you want to come in and shop and things like that. And, we've been keeping distance from older family members. And,
right.
Thanksgiving's coming up next week, and we're not really doing anything for Thanksgiving because
I know.
Which is all, okay, if that's what needs to be.
Right. If that's what we need to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But we are lacking the history because it's such a new problem. We are lacking the history to be able to look at and feel some comfort about. You know what I mean? Because that really is what you're saying. Sure. You would love somebody to say to you, look, it's probable or improbable, or you have this percentage of a chance. You're looking for those kind of things that make you comfortable. Whether they're even true or not, they make you comfortable when you hear them. So
right. Like last week, I have like Facebook groups of, type 1, whatever, and Dexcom. And I think your podcast is on there too. And so I just put a thing out there just for curiosity, how many people with diabetes have had the virus? How did you respond to it? How did you handle it? Did you recover okay? Just, I guess I was more curious.
Yeah.
And so it was just a variety of things, but most of them, they were pretty consistent, that they got fairly sick. And a few, most, I would say more than not, a higher percentage of them, they ended up like in the hospital. I'm like, shit, I can't end up in the hospital, because that's probably my biggest worry, because like I have 3 little people that depend on me. And so,
and if you leave them, you leave those kids with that guy for 6 weeks, they'll just be out on a lake.
Oh my God, I don't know what would happen.
Yeah, shooting things.
You're gonna get mad at me for saying that, but yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I definitely I have more patience, and he would agree with me, with that, with the boys. I think it's just because they have so much energy, and then they fight, and then they're loving each other. I mean, it's a love-hate relationship, so it's like this swinging of emotions, but yeah, I tune most of it out, but it can get overwhelming sometimes.
I just stare through them, Scott. That's all. It's like they're not there. I pretend they're little pills, and I put them in imaginary little bottles, and I mail them away.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, pretty much.
Tell me a little bit about being diagnosed with type 1 when you were.
So it was kind of interesting. I was 8. So then, my oldest is 8. So I try not to sit and like obsess about, oh my God, he's peeing a lot. All those things that a parent worries about, I guess, with having kids. And so yeah, I was 8 years old. I got a virus of some kind. I got sick, like the flu. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of declined after that. I lost weight, was very ill. At the time, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. My mom was a single parent. And so I think a lot of it was just overlooked, like my symptoms and how I was presenting at that time.
Okay.
And, back then, I feel like it wasn't as common either, type 1. And so I feel like a lot of it was overlooked. And then as far as her being distracted with being a single mom and having a lot on her plate, the school finally, had said something, and I think I fell asleep at my desk is what happened. Mm. And I just remember having this horrible headache. I was barely coherent, and I want to say it was like 38 pounds, 38, 40 pounds when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
So pretty little. And I remember then they're like, you have to take her in. Otherwise, basically we'll call someone because she needs to go in to be seen. Because I would fight it every time. I was a brat. And I'd be like, I don't want to go. And I'd get in my way. And my mom would, not take me because I would throw a big fit or something.
Your mom was like, I have 3 other kids. If this one dies, it'll be fine.
Well, oh, yeah,
right.
A spare. So
honestly, 4 is too many. So,
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Plus you're probably eating less.
So, but yeah, during this time, so it's kind of interesting because I knew what was like going on. Well, I didn't know what was happening to me, but I learned about diabetes while I was actually becoming diagnosed with it.
How?
Because my teacher was reading a book called Sugar Isn't Everything. It's by Willow Davis Roberts. It's an older book, and it's about a girl who gets type 1 diabetes and going about the story about how she has to, adapt to this new lifestyle. And so it was very interesting during this whole time of reading this book. I'm diagnosed with it. So when the doctor had told me after they drew a blood sugar, and told me it was almost 700, that, she has type 1 diabetes. I remember sitting there in my mom's lap, and I was just like, I just started bawling because I knew at that moment, this was a forever thing. I knew what it meant. And my mom was kind of more like, why is she, like she didn't really know what it was. And so it was just interesting that I knew more than she did at that time, and how it all kind of worked out that way. It was very weird.
You were being read a book in class about, it says, a detailed description of juvenile onset diabetes using a fictional form in which 11-year-old Amy discovers that she has the disease, learns to treat it and deal with her anger, and finally accepts that she can live with it. And you're being read that in school when you're diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Yep.
Wow. And that's how you knew sitting in the doctor's office. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was like, you're kidding, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It was just like, really? I don't know. It was really strange how that worked out. But
I wonder what would have happened if your teacher was reading you a book about like winning the lottery and becoming a millionaire. Do you think that would have happened to you? Like,
I don't know, but that would have been.
You think there was this magic thing that was happening in the room, and that's the shit you got because she was reading?
Yeah. It's too bad it wasn't that, right?
It'd been nice if she was reading Spider-Man. I mean, come on.
True.
That would have been way better.
Magic powers,
Don't you think? Honestly. Although, you'd have to leave Minnesota. It's too cold to be in that underwear outside, I think.
I know. It's, it's not too bad when we have the days where like we have the nice snowfall, and which we had, it was a couple weeks ago, just really random, this weather. We had like a blizzard, and then it was like 70 degrees and super weird. But it's nice with the boys. They love it. Take them sledding, and next I want to, like take them skiing. I used to ski, and my husband, he's never went either. So it'd be all their, first time going.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. It gets long. If it wasn't as long, our winters, it wouldn't be so bad. But
I feel like because you live there, you don't realize how terrible it is. Like if you were to go somewhere warm, you'd be like, oh, I'm never going back there. By the way, interesting side note about algorithms online and how amazing they are. I just recently finished watching a television show called Longmire on Netflix, which is basically like a modern Western TV show. In that television show, they referenced the book Lonesome Dove a couple of times. And when I went to Amazon and searched for Sugar Isn't Anything, it said, hey, books you might also like. And Lonesome Dove was one of them.
Oh, really?
I feel like that's that, when it gives you that feeling like someone was in the room while you were watching a TV show, like sending notes to Amazon. This was one of those moments. It has nothing to do with you, Minnesota diabetes, Ruff, but it is. I just was like, oh my God, that's creepy. All right.
Yeah,
I have never thought about reading the book Lonesome Dove in my entire life.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So that makes me wonder, since we are so impressionable, or computers are, I wonder how much of your early experience with diabetes, did any of it mimic the girl's experience in the book? Like, did you take up any of that as your own without realizing it? I know that's a good question, right? You were probably just thinking that, like, wow, Scott, really thoughtful question. I can't wait to hear the answer to it. Well, you're going to find that answer in just a moment, as soon as I tell you about the Diabetes Pro Tip series from the Juicebox Podcast. First thing I'm going to do is read you the last review I got for the Pro Tip series. It says this: "This show," meaning the Juicebox Podcast, "this show's Pro Tip series has literally changed my life. My son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 5 months ago, a few weeks before he turned 2. I knew nothing about type 1, and the past 5 months have been a struggle. My son's honeymoon period lasted a few days, and then every day was a battle of highs and lows, even with an insulin pump and a CGM. I had instincts on what I needed to do for him, but felt scared because the endo shut down all of my ideas and suggestions. I truly felt hopeless and out of control, and scared for my son's health. Then I had this podcast recommended to me by another mom, and it was life-changing. All of my instincts were validated, and most of my fears eased. It shifted my perspective on type 1 diabetes and medical devices. Within 2 days of listening to the podcast, my son's average glucose levels went from 150 to 119. His spikes past 200 disappeared or became a rarity. Most importantly, after listening to the Pro Tip series, I feel so much more in control and less fearful about his diabetes. I feel empowered to make decisions that I know are right for him, and I trust that what I think is going to happen will happen. I know every day won't be perfect, but after this podcast, I feel up to the challenge for the first time since he was diagnosed. I finally feel like a good mom again. Thank you." That's from March 3rd, 2021. Please check out the Diabetes Pro Tip episodes and the Defining Diabetes episodes. Again, they're right there in your podcast player, or you can go to diabetesprotip.com to get them listed out for you. You could actually listen there online, which I don't think is really handy for most people, but at least they're in order. You can see what episode numbers they are. Then you can go back into your player and listen through. That's just one person's review. I could read you a lot more, but I'd like to get you back to Ashley. So I will. If you have type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, if you're using insulin, whether you're MDI, on a pump, the caregiver of someone with type 1, or an adult who's been living with it forever, check out the Diabetes Pro Tip episodes from the Juicebox Podcast. Make sure you know the terms that you're using with diabetes. Check out the Defining Diabetes episodes from the podcast. That's all I got for you guys. I want you to get back to Ashley and find out the answer to that question. That great question that the interviewer asked. It was really insightful. All right, here we go. Looking back?
I think so, because I don't know if it was the book, or I don't know if it was just my take on it, or maybe how I saw my mom at that time, because I knew it was affecting her, pretty badly. And she just went through a divorce with my dad, and he was, not a good person, not good to us or my mom or anything. So I think during that time, I was just kind of like, well, this is a lot, and it's a lot for her to take on. And it's just kind of funny too. It's funny now, but so I get this weird thing with blood sometimes, which everybody's like, Ashley, you're a nurse, you're a type 1 diabetic, and you faint, but it's only when it's a control thing. So if I have my blood drawn, I have to lay down every time for my A1Cs. It's really kind of silly, but, so at that time, they're just like, how are you going to give yourself a shot? You're not going to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. You're going to pass out. So it was more what drove me is my siblings and family being like, oh, she's not going to be able to do it. Just had this whole impression that I just don't think she's gonna be able to do it. And that kind of drove me more to be like, I am gonna show every one of you that I'm gonna do this. And I did. And I was doing shots myself before I left that hospital.
Wow.
And I continued to do that.
So mainly because people thought you couldn't, you felt like you had to prove that you could.
Yeah, like proving them wrong type of thing. I guess I've always kind of been.
Give like an adversarial like vibe about you in general.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't mean that in a bad way, I guess. Like,
yeah.
I guess there's also a way to be impacted by that where you just feel like you absorb it. You just think, oh, okay, well, they don't think I can, so I can't. Like obviously.
Yeah, I don't want to be like, oh, I can't, and then play like the victim role and be like, poor me. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like this isn't cancer, so I'm grateful that it's something I can control. That's it. And I'm gonna do this. I mean, then they had me in the hospital. I think it was like 8 days, and because I was in DKA, and so I had like a nutritionist come in, and back then it was all different of how you had to eat and all this stuff, and so a lot of information obviously for an 8-year-old to take in, but I felt like I already was prepped for it, and maybe because it was listening to the book.
Yeah, I wonder too about like
had something to do with it.
Because there's some heady things you're talking about as an 8-year-old. I'm drawn to ask, were you a little on your own to begin with? I'm not trying to shit on your mom.
Yeah,
but.
Well, no, maybe. I mean, my siblings were pretty good. I mean, my oldest sister, she's 10 years older than me. And so, 18, so senior. So she's, preoccupied with school stuff and whatnot. My brother's 2 years older than me, so we were pretty close growing up, but I don't know. I guess during that time I felt maybe a little bit more, I'm just going to have to figure this out on my own type of thing. But I had support. It's not like I didn't have a support, but in the same sense, it's like, well, really the only one who's going to do this is going to be me. I mean, my siblings are giving me shots. To think my 10-year-old brother was giving me a shot in the back of my arm is just crazy to me. But, it was scary too. They had to come in and they had to learn on an orange too. Right. They had to do injections on an orange. They taught your siblings
and you and your mom.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all my siblings. Yeah. They had to take like classes.
Fun for them. They must have hated,
I know.
They
right?
must have been like, what is going on? The whole thing is kind of crazy. It's only well, I shouldn't say only 28 years, a long time ago. So, And so what was how did your care go? Like, where do you remember like your A1Cs being? Cause they were measuring those back then, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So when I, signed up to have this interview with you, I wanted all my records. So my mom didn't really remember, what my A1Cs were. I knew they weren't the best.
Okay.
I knew then, the doctors were like, oh yeah, just keep her above 250 and she won't die on you, type of thing. And, little did my mom know, I think it was just the resources or lack of resources, I should say, that she had and knowledge. So nothing that's her fault. But I did run not in a healthy range. I mean, I was 13 when I was diagnosed, A1C of 13.2, I think. Mm-hmm. And then I think they finally got it down to like 11. And then it was, I don't know, like a few years after that, it was like 7.9. But yeah, I never ran like in the 5 or 6s until now, till the last, 8 years.
Okay. What changed 8 years ago?
A pump. I finally convinced myself, and the phobia of getting low blood sugar. I struggled with that since I think high school. I had a really bad hypoglycemic episode, and I think it was like in the 20s. And I just remember being not in control of myself. Mm-hmm. And I hated that feeling. And more like a panic, impending doom feeling I get. I still, when I'm trending down, it's kind of weird. That's my first symptom is I won't get sweaty or shaky. All of a sudden I'll just have this thought, like a bad thought.
Like I'm going to die?
Super horrible. Just like an anxiety. I don't know. It could be anything random. It'll just come to my mind. And then I'll look at my pump. I'm like, yep, I'm sure I'm coming down. You know?
Where does that number happen at? Like, where does that feeling come in at?
I think it's anytime I start trending down, like below 100.
Like the fall. Arden used to say
the fall.
Yeah, Arden would say she felt the fall.
Yep. It's you feel the fall. It's almost like if you were. I compare it as just if you were you're on a roller coaster. You know, you're going up. You're there. You feel okay. It's not moving, and then all of a sudden you start going down, and you can feel the gravity and everything, just the weight pull, and it's kind of the same concept.
Yeah,
I feel like
your insides just feel weird and pulled on.
Yeah,
and there is a literal feeling of
crazy.
fall. Do you literally feel like you're falling? It's like a change of pressure in your head, or
yeah. Well, no, it's just like more like I don't know, just like a little. I'd say a little dizzy, and just like anxiety.
And then
my heart rate will go up, and
because you know what can happen if you keep going.
Right.
Okay. All right. So
and I try not to be, because I've tried to be more aggressive with insulin. You know, obviously, I want to be in better control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now not for my own sake, but for my children mostly. And that's probably what has changed. You know, I've always tried to have good control. Adolescent years were the hardest, I would say. But as far as like being a mom, you know, I'm just going to do everything possible that I can to have it in good control, and not only blood sugar control, but like cholesterol and blood pressure and all those other factors that play a big role.
So being a mom made you feel like you need to be healthier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Healthier than what I, used to be, or I tried to be. I've always been a very active person, into fitness, and I was a personal trainer before, doing massage therapy, and then before I was a nurse. So I have all kind of different random roles that I've done as far as jobs and stuff. But health and fitness has always been a big thing.
So many people have come on the show and said that they had type 1 diabetes. They've had it their whole life. And it's normally women. And they say that once they either meet someone they want to marry or have a child, that's the first time they become like serious, I guess, about a lower, more stable blood sugar. I think I find that to be fascinating. Because I don't think it's uncommon that it's hard to do something for yourself, but for some reason it's much easier to do it for someone else.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I've always wanted to have good control, because I felt like, at that time being diagnosed, that this was something I can control. I saw other people who, died from cancer, just things they can't control or manage, I should say. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, to me, I'm not going to complain about that. And I want other people to not. I think the biggest thing in school, when I was in elementary school, people would be looking at me, and, and a few kids would call me the AIDS girl. And I would laugh, because I'd be like, okay, you just don't know anything and you're stupid and whatever. But, I wanted to really educate other people about it, because at that time I was like the only diabetic in the school. And so I did a blood sugar check on my meter in front of the classroom, because then, you could bring the needles out and it wouldn't matter. Had a few kids pass out on me, but,
from seeing needles, they would get woozy.
Yeah, the blood, I think, I was doing a demonstration, passed out.
And I'm sorry, I want to make sure I heard you right. They called you AIDS girl?
Yeah, I had a few kids that did that.
Because you were sick, and they felt like you were sick. And that was
I think they thought they could get it from me or something. Like I was contagious.
Oh.
Like they would get,
that's terrible.
Diabetes from me. Yeah, I know, isn't it? So I didn't care, because I would just kind of laugh, and because I'd be like, well, you need to, obviously, you don't know anything, You just look silly saying that. So, but yeah, I think throughout my whole, adolescent years, even though I didn't have like the best control, I think it wasn't because I didn't want to. I knew it was important, and I knew all the complications that could happen. I knew, I was very informed about it and I understood it. I think it was more of I had that phobia so badly of the low blood sugar and like being out and about and being with friends or like at a party. I wasn't the best kid. So I was very, like as far as drinking and stuff, I did a lot of that throughout my high school years and I was very smart about it. Obviously, I'd always like check my sugars and stuff, but yeah, it was just like those years of then I switched doctors is what really changed things too. And he's like, we really have to get, tighter control for you.
No kidding.
Will affect you.
So the first time you're pregnant, do you get pregnant on purpose? Like, do you say,
yeah.
So you have like a lead up to it. Did you do anything about your blood sugar prior to becoming pregnant, or how did you handle that?
Yeah. So I did see my OB doctor. I want to say it was like the fall before that. I don't know, it was like March or whatever. I found out I was pregnant with my son, and, he did all like, I want to make sure your, kidneys are fine, and we're going to check everything. Just make sure you're good and healthy. And, I did everything and it was fine. He's like, the one thing, you just got to try to get my A1C at that time was like 7.2 or something. He's like, I really want it down, like 6.5 or, 6 to 6.5. And so I did. I was, I had the pump then. It was a Medtronic pump. And then I was doing, I don't think the sensor at that time. I think I was the very first one, which was awful, by the way. Oh my God.
Wait, which one?
I have so much scar tissue. It's terrible.
Which one?
It was I want to say the N-Light. Is it the N-Light? Yeah.
Who made that?
But
that's
Medtronic.
Medtronic, yeah.
Oh my God. So
and
painful.
You live in Minnesota. You're not even allowed to say anything bad about Medtronic. They'll kick you right out of the state.
Well, I'm not. I am going to say a few words that I'm not a fan of Medtronic. I will just say that. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to bash. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, and that's all I'm going to say.
I appreciate this. Well, listen.
I had my experience with it, but
yeah, early technology too. In fairness to them, very early technology. Not great stuff.
Yeah,
by today's
and they were, I think, one of the first who came out with it. I just did one of my papers on healthcare technology, and I chose to do it, on sensors. Why not? So I did a little research on that. It was very interesting.
Yeah,
like as far as what's came out and just the advances too for the future as far as.
Yeah, listen, whenever you can move on from something that people used to refer to as a harpoon to something better, I think is a definite upgrade.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure.
Well, well, hold on. Let me kind of poke around a little bit here for a second. Okay. So you meet a guy. How long until you have the baby after you're married?
Oh, we got married 2010.
Right.
And then 2012, March of 2012.
Right. Couple years.
I was pregnant. Yeah.
And so in those years, A1C more in the 7s, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yep. 6, 7. Yeah.
Still having a reasonably wilder life, or are you kind of settling in by then?
I was doing schoolwork. Okay. My life consisted of nursing school at that time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then it kind of intersects the having the baby and the getting on a pump, all that sort of intersects time wise together. Mm-hmm. And then what about having a pump helped you?
Well, I think, first I was hesitant to go on it just because technology and I just trusting it was my biggest thing. But then once I got on it, I'm like, God, why didn't I do this before? I think a lot of people feel that way. I don't know. It's just the flexibility. I can go run and then I don't have to, you know what I mean? It's just a lot more it, it's just, flexible. Like compared to the Lantus and the Novolog, or even better yet, the NPH and regular, which old school.
But that's how they sold it back then, though, right? Like, oh, you'll take less shots, there'll be fewer shots, and you only have to take one insulin. This thing's going to make all your decisions. You'll just tell it how many carbs you're having. Like, that was the sales pitch for a pump all that time ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, what did it basically allowed you to do was, I mean, what were you doing prior on MDI that wasn't happening on pumps? Were you skipping injections or not pre-bolusing, or what gets easy? What got easier for
I think a lot of it was not as, I would say, closely monitored. My blood sugar, I would tend to just run higher, so then I knew I was safer.
Okay.
And then I could go, work out for 2 hours, and then I would be, something crazy because I was very active, and and then I wouldn't crash. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have that anxiety or that feeling of being low. Because some people can tolerate it just fine, and they don't feel crappy when they're low. But
back then your blood sugar was higher more frequently,
right? So then your body, it's like a shock.
It was even
because then you're not used to, even a blood sugar. Like people who run high all the time, and then they're like 120, and they feel like they're low.
Yeah. How about now? Is it different for you now?
Yeah, it's way better. Like it's actually where I don't feel it. I mean, if I don't have the swinging, like the deviation isn't huge, like if it's not swinging so much, it's a lot better. And I won't have hardly any symptoms.
Okay.
Like I could be 55 and I won't have any, or 50 and I won't have symptoms, which can be a bad thing. But if I don't have a ton of insulin on board, I know I'm not going to die. I have glucose, there's things to intervene. I guess I don't know why I think it was just those few times that I had a really bad experience. And then I actually had to have not like therapy, but kind of a little bit to work through some of that.
Oh, so you were really freaked out by it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Like it affected me for a while. And then I was able to kind of overcome some of that, and not be so afraid of it. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of getting that under control, getting on a better system. I had the Medtronic, the closed loop system, and I felt like when it worked great, but it was just like a couple day thing here and there. And then the calibrating, and it was just like, no, I can't do that. So then my doctor obviously recommended another system and gave it a shot, and glad I did, because I think I had 2 Medtronic pumps that they failed on me, unfortunately, over the weekend. And so that really sucked, because then I was just doing manual injections every 2 hours.
I don't know where it's, and the more people get on technology sooner and sooner in their diagnosis, the less they know how to do. I got a note from somebody the other day that was just in a panic because their pump broke, and they're like, I don't know how to do this other thing at all.
Right.
They completely lost,
Right. Yeah.
Well, okay. So when you asked to come on the show, what were you hoping to talk about? Like, are we getting to what there's
a few other things I would like to bring up.
Tell me about it.
So obviously, I don't know, like you said, with the whole, fingers, less needle pokes. And then you feel like, at least for me, people are like, oh, you got to give yourself shots. That's got to be the worst thing ever. And that's not the worst thing at all. That's probably the easiest thing out of all of it. It's just, maintaining that window and balancing that teeter-totter and making sure it's not tipping too far to the left or too far to the right. And I think it's just important for people to understand that, and understand the difference of how it affects people differently, as far as diabetes goes.
Do you feel like the people around you just don't get it? And
there's so many people around here that don't get it. It's unbelievable. I had a really bad experience 2 weeks ago. I had to go in I had to go get checked out because I was not feeling good. My husband had to come home. I went into the ER. We were, I think, exposed prior to that. I had a babysitter here, and she texted me and said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I have a positive result." And so I thought, okay, well, whatever. We're just going to get it, wait it out. And my sugars were higher that weekend. And then come Monday, I just did not feel right. And here I was like dehydrated. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just the busy with the boys, not drinking enough. And my electrolytes were like all wacky. So anyways, I get into the ER. The ER doctor's like, well, we're going to check your blood sugar. And obviously I was like stressed at the time. So like my sugars, like I'm very sensitive to that. If I get adrenaline, it just like shoots me way up.
Right.
And so right away he's like, "Okay, you need to take your pump off. We're starting a insulin drip." And I look at him and I'm like, "The hell if you are." I'm like, "You're not starting an insulin drip on me." I said, "You can call my doctor." And my doctor and I have that relationship where I have his cell phone number and I'll call him up, because this doctor was very adamant. "Well, no, I have a 12-year-old, down the hallway. I know what DKA is." And then when he said that, I go, "DKA? What?"
How high was your blood sugar?
I think it was like 260. And I was just like, I don't know. I was just like 100 to 130 all that morning. Mm-hmm. And this was like at 12:30. And I explained the situation. I explained that, I was not feeling the best. I think I am just dehydrated. And sure enough, when they drew a metabolic panel on me and they, my sodium was off, potassium, I think my bicarb was a little bit lower too. And so because of that, I wasn't in DKA, but he basically said, "You're going to be in DKA. I'm starting you on a drip and you're taking the pump off." Like he wasn't a fan of the insulin pump.
Well, and so that's weird because you would think that if you just got hydrated with, through a line, your blood sugar probably would have fallen pretty quickly.
Oh yeah. And it did. I said, "You just wait a little bit." I said, "Once I get fluids, I will be fine. I guarantee it." I said, "I've had this for 28 years. I know myself." Trying to tell the doctor this and just having them tell me is like probably the worst thing to do. Like when it comes to that, you know what I mean? Like something you've had.
Yeah. You just know you can stick up for yourself and be clear about it.
It's almost like I get very like, not like protective. It's a weird thing to say, but like just more like defensive a little bit when someone's going to tell me that they don't really have a lot of knowledge about it. I mean, he's a doctor, but thankfully when he did call my doctor then, because he agreed to call before they did anything, because he wanted to give me 10 units of insulin right there through IV.
For 260?
Yeah.
That seems excessive. and I don't know any of your ratios, and that seems a little heavy
my
to me.
Sensitivity level, like 1 unit will drop me 50 points. Yeah. I said, "You are not giving me that." And I was kind of like, not a panic, because I was getting a little bit angry. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie. And so there's like 2 other people that came in. And I kind of was like, really? I mean, what, you going to strap me down? You're going to give me this? Like, I don't know. It was pretty crazy. And I don't know if it's just like the stress of the pandemic right now and everybody else was stressed, but it was just like, hey, you're not doing that. You're going to call him first. And then we're going to reevaluate the situation.
Sounds like you handled it really well.
I tried. I try to just keep my cool. I don't get upset. It takes a lot to get me upset.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that will get me upset. Well, as far as
I got a note the other day from a mom whose child is newly diagnosed, and her husband is a doctor. And so she's going through the diagnosis thing more recently, doctors and hospitals not recognizing what's going on. Had they not noticed something and said something, who knows what kind of care the kid would have gotten. Leads the mother to say to me, she's newly diagnosed family. And she's like, there should be more awareness around this, which obviously people who've been around diabetes for a while know that there's, a constant push for there to be awareness around testing when people aren't feeling well. And generally speaking, explaining type 1 diabetes better to physicians. But I think the truth is that you can't really do that. Like
Right.
there's no magic thing that any of us are going to do that is just going to blanket the country and the world with knowledge that everyone's going to soak up and have forever and never forget again the next time they see somebody with diabetes or showing signs or symptoms. It's just the world's a continuing process, and
Yeah.
you just have to keep educating, keep going.
Right.
You know,
Right.
It
yeah.
sucks.
And that's why I wasn't trying to get too upset, but in the same sense, like I was though, because you're going to do this to me and this is my body and you're going to bottom me out.
Right.
Because I have had bad experience in the past and that has happened to me.
No, and I don't want to ignore like the very visceral feeling you have, because I think it's obvious to have. But that intention of people need to know, like that sentence that I've heard spoken to me, typed to me, said to me a million times over the last 15 years with well-meaning people who've had bad experiences who are like, people need to know. And I'm like, yes, they do. How are you going to do that? I don't know. So there's not much you can do. Like, you know, like as much awareness, as this podcast spreads to people about type 1 in general and how to manage insulin and things like that. If I went up on the internet right now and deleted all these episodes, 3 weeks from now, everybody who learned something from this podcast would dissipate back into the world, and that would be it. It would all start over again. And I'm not reaching nearly everybody with diabetes. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just very difficult to quell that thirst for, I wish everybody knew. Like there's no good, there's no good way to, I mean, I appreciate you adding your voice to the podcast so that hopefully more people will know it, and this will help somebody. But
well, I hope so. Cause I mean, it's not like I'm trying to be like, okay, you know, get down on somebody, but just to be like, hey, like, I mean, there is like stereotyping with this disease.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you say, I mean, as far as like people will just be like, oh, there's sugar in that, you can't eat that, you know, old school stuff.
Right.
Like,
or AIDS girl, which
right. Like, And so I feel like awareness needs to be more out there. And just the fact that diabetes isn't just, you know, just the shots, and it's about just, you have a constant balancing act. You know what I mean? It's just like everything you do, you know, you sleep, it never goes away. I mean, for me, cause I like to be in good control. I get up to go to the bathroom at night. I check where I'm at, you know, just because I like to be at a good number. I sleep the best at a good number. I mean, and you feel the best.
Yeah. You want to wake up. Well, the whole thing,
right.
Listen, in absolute honesty, the way I think about diabetes is that it just doesn't stop. And it does, but I don't think about it. I don't think of that in like necessarily a bad way. I mean, what I mean by it is that people segment it into, oh, my mornings are a problem, or my overnights, or I struggle at lunch. I just don't think about it that way. I think about it like driving a car. Like my car's in between the lines, and it's my goal to keep the car in between the lines. We don't want to swerve too far one way or too far the other way, because when we do, you know, when we go too far off the road, now we're in the weeds and we're bouncing through rocks, and it's a lot harder to get back on the road and get stable again. So in my opinion, much simpler to be an active participant in driving and just make the little adjustments, the bumps and the nudges, and hold yourself in the lane. Right. And then if you never get high, you don't get high, and then you don't get in that fight, and then you don't crash down later. It's to me, it's about small efforts throughout the day that
like being proactive, basically.
That leads to less big things needing to be done or happening to you. I don't know. It just, it makes sense to me that way, and it works that way. Like this morning at 6 a.m., when I did not have to be up until 7, at 6 a.m., I got a text message from Arden that said, my pod is out of insulin. So we thought we were going to make it till the morning, and we missed by like an hour. So, 6 o'clock comes, she texts me, my pod's out of insulin. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get up and I'll grab another pod. I'll fill it. I'll just take it up to her room. We'll slap it on. I'm going to see if I can go back and get like another half an hour's worth of sleep. And I knew she was still asleep. Like, keep in mind, she didn't pop out of bed going, well, there's something to take care of now. She told me when I said, okay, she was like, okay. And she went right back to sleep again. So Phil, I let the dogs out. I'll be honest with you. I fed the dogs. I grabbed a little insulin, put it in a pump, went upstairs. We cleaned off a spot, put the pod on. And in that little amount of time, her blood sugar went from 108 to 127 diagonal up. So it was rising. And we put the pump on. I gave her what I felt like was a healthy bolus. Like she got like 2 units. And trust me, it doesn't take 2 units to move Arden from 128 to 95 or 85.
Right.
But I just figured, well, she hasn't had basal for the last 20 minutes or so. And, I don't know how this is all going. And we never experienced a spike after that. Like she's 111 now, and she's only been wearing the new pod for a few hours. And I would like to make a small adjustment. And I probably will after I get done talking to you. I'll talk to her about being a little more aggressive right here with the 111. But I think that's just a great example of just not getting too far off course ever.
Right. Right. Yep.
So
yep.
I agree with you. And by the way, going back a second, I wish that I could think of a better way to spread awareness about type 1 because, I don't talk about it much, but that was my whole goal when I started my blog.
I think you do though. I mean, through everyone's, like, from listening to you, I learned a lot. I mean, I would pre-bolus, but not as often as I do now. I mean, just hearing other people's stories too, that you have on there. It's all, I think, you learn from other people's experiences too.
Well, I agree.
And so you are, spreading awareness.
Yeah. You know what?
I think what you're doing is like really great thing.
You're very nice.
That's why I wanted to be on here.
Well, thank you. Look at you, sweet talking me, trying to get the title changed, but it's not going to work.
Honest.
Ashley, it's not going to work. It's the title is well. But first of all, thank you. That was very nice. And secondly, what I meant was, I believe that I'm spreading awareness, and I think there's valuable information in the podcast, like you said. But I mean, like that one blanket magic wand. Everyone knows, and we can start from a new reality. That doesn't exist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't mandate that kind of understanding. All right.
For sure. Yeah.
So I very much enjoyed this. I just want to go over it again very quickly. When life is difficult, that is what? What's the word?
Rough.
Right. And then a dog says.
And not a woof.
Right. But what's the dog?
A rough.
And the thing on the top of your house.
Rough and rough.
But what's the thing on the top of your house?
What was that?
What's the thing on the top of your house that keeps you dry?
A roof.
See, you said roof the first time, and I knew
roof. I thought I'd change it up a little bit.
I knew you were trying too hard the first time when you said roof. I'm like, there's no way she says roof in general, like just when she's talking. It's rough, right?
It's rough. It's
all right. So
I knew I'd get for the Minnesota accent. That's all right.
Listen,
I was already anticipating it.
There are 3 different words that mean 3 completely different things.
Yeah, they do.
You're saying exactly the same way.
Yeah. Pretty much.
You're too landlocked. I need to get you to an ocean. When's the last time you saw an ocean?
Oh my God. Right before it was 2012. We went to Mexico. I know we were supposed to go on a trip, my husband and I.
Tell your story.
It was through his work, and it was right at the pandemic though. And it was a free trip. Yeah.
Losing a free trip is the worst thing ever.
Super bummer. I know. And so he was really looking forward to it, which I don't blame him at all. And first time leaving the kids too. So it's just like, well,
wonderful.
Let's just do it. It'll be good for us and for them. And, and then it got canceled because of everything. And so I think it's just been a really rough year, for a hard year, I should say.
No, you should say a rough year.
I know. I probably say that word way too much. There's other words I say way too much too. And my husband always reminds me.
No.
My kids say it too. I mean, they're like little copycat, everything I do, I hear what they say. I'm like, oh my God, I say that way too much.
Well, hey, just generally speaking, what kind of work does your husband do?
Like hydraulic, he builds elevators.
Wow. And that was going to get you a trip somewhere? Nice.
Yeah, he works for a company that they're really generous, and they you can like win trips places. I mean, it wasn't the ocean.
But it was not home where those kids are.
Right.
Hey, which closet were you
Just
gonna
to
lock
get a
the
little
children
break, because
in?
we haven't, had just us time in a while, which I get can be a lot.
Which closet were you going to lock the children in when you left? Or were you going to leave them with somebody?
Probably the downstairs,
Well,
basement.
Roomy, a little bit of light.
Nobody can hear them then.
Yeah. You don't cause your problem with the cops.
And we have really good friends that would have taken them. We had it all planned out, and then, plans change.
That sucks. Well, I think that especially when you live in the middle of the country, it's hard to get to the ocean. Now, my brother married his wife in St. John, the Virgin Islands, which I'm always very grateful, because he's like, we're trying to decide if we should have a bigger wedding here in Wisconsin or a much smaller wedding in St. John. And I said, well, I'm voting much smaller wedding in St. John, mainly because I don't want to come to Wisconsin. But mostly, but mostly because I'd like to go to a beach. And as he went back and forth, I actually sent him a note once, and I said, I'm willing to make the gift larger, because we were going to give them money. I was like, I'm willing to make the gift larger if we can go to do this on an island. And so my brother got married on the beach, which was really lovely, except it was very interesting to see his wife, who had pretty much like never seen the ocean before, see it for the first time in St. John, I feel for you guys. And at the same time, I'm jealous. When I dream about running away and retiring somewhere, in my mind, it's like Wyoming or Utah or something like that,
Yeah, it's beautiful out there, like Idaho.
Yeah.
I've been out there a few times, and it's a whole different country.
Yeah, except I'll end up dying in New Jersey. But I understand what you're saying. I have a lymph node right now. I just reached around my neck the other day. I had a bump on my neck, and I said to Kelly, I'm like, feel this. What is this? What is this? And she rubs it, and she goes, well, that's not good. And I said, why would you lead with that? I said, why would you?
Oh my God.
I said, I might have a little bit, like I said, my nose is a little stuffy. And she goes, do you have COVID? I'm like, no. I'm like, but this is definitely a lymph node, right? When they get kind of like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you're fighting something on, they get swelled up.
And so now I'm just touching it. Like, I'm positive I have neck cancer. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, geez,
I don't even think neck cancer is a thing. Yeah. But I'm just like, oh, this is it right here. I'm never going to make it to Wyoming. I want to see a bison. You know what I mean? Don't you want to see a bison? You guys have moose or elk there or something, don't you?
Yeah. So there is a state park over here, and we can drive through and see the bison over there. And we have we have a lot of state parks around here, which is nice, because then we can go, actually do something, because you can't really do anything else other than stuff that's outside. So, COVID.
I'm down with that. I really am. I was selling it to Kelly the other day. I was selling, not telling. I was like, I just need a good internet connection and a microphone. I can do my job. And I was like, so where can you do yours from? Because I hate this place. Not New Jersey. Like, I like the people. I think it's like, I like living around here. It's just, I wish it's going to get cold and dark and gloomy and stay that way for way too long.
For a while. Yeah. I've never been out east. I've been out west. I've been to California, Texas, Mexico, Idaho, Wyoming, but I've never been out east. I think the most, we were in South Carolina for our honeymoon, Hilton Head Island.
Yeah.
Savannah.
Nice there. Yeah. We used to, I've been to the Outer Banks of North Carolina a couple of times. And that's a nice trip. But I enjoyed it when I was in Texas. I wish COVID would go away and people would invite me back to Texas. I'd like to see Austin and
it's fun.
Houston,
it's fun
and stuff
there.
like that. But anyway, all right. Well, listen, we've done a good thing here today. I don't know what we did, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks. I probably could have rambled on a little bit more, but
yeah, you're cool. You got something else? I'm not going to cut you off if you have something else.
Well, I mean, I think that the other thing too, like during the time I scheduled this with you, and then I think I told you about my stepdad passed away like almost 3 months ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It
was the end of August, and so he was type 1, so not blood related, but the other family member, I have no other family members. Well, my cousin is actually, but
your cousin will be
so
thrilled to hear that.
Yeah. So like so that is, I would say there's one on my mom's side, but as far as him, my stepdad, we got like an autopsy and how, because I thought he was wearing a pump that was, it was weird because I had the recall letter in the mail about it and about something about the reservoir, infusing the entire thing or something like that.
Okay.
And he was wearing that pump. And so I was just like, well, it was very unexpected. My mom found him. I mean, really unfortunate that it happened the way it did. But yeah, and my first thought in my head was, I want to see his pump. And so I got a hold of it and I saw like all the history on it and everything. And I'm like, God, maybe he gave too much or the pump gave too much. And he woke up, he was not coherent, and that was that. And so they're still actually looking into it right now. But they did find other things. I mean, as far as like, when I talked about, it's important to have a good A1C, but it's also important to have good cholesterol and good blood pressure. I remember an episode you were talking about, if you were to look at or to think about diabetes from a physical standpoint, like if you were to actually see inside your vessels and your veins and you have too much sugar in them, it's like sandblasting your veins. I think you were talking about that one episode.
Right.
And basically he didn't keep the best care, manage his diabetes the best, but he was trying, I think, at like the end. And so he did have like arterial sclerosis of his arteries of his heart, which they did find. And so I think with just being type 1, I think it's just important to take all those preventative health measures, like getting the cholesterol checked and all of the things you should be doing, other than having a good A1C is, I guess, my other thing I wanted to bring up, like for people.
Take care of your overall health is a big deal for everybody, not just people with diabetes. That's for certain. For sure. So, I think there's just other factors that go into it that play a huge role in just overall health and women who are type 1 too. That was the other stigma I wanted to just shortly touch on. It was just like you're type 1, so you're having a big baby. That's why your babies are huge, because your blood sugar is out of control. Because my last son was almost 12 pounds. But my A1C was 6.2. Okay.
And so I just had these ginormous children that looked like I was carrying triplets.
You get hate mail from your vagina ever?
Well, I mean, I had C-sections.
Oh, okay. I was going to say then that's perfect.
I don't think that was even possible.
I would have had a zipper installed in case, just in case.
I'm not like the biggest person, so I carrying these boys.
Let's take it out through this hatch right here in my side, if you don't mind. That'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, I would walk around and I would get the craziest looks from people, and but I just
How tall are you?
Like 5'6".
Oh, okay. With this giant baby in front of you?
Yeah. So so I had my first son was very preterm. He was airlifted and stuff, but he was 6 pounds. My middle son was full term, and then my youngest son he was a big boy, like 23 inches long, just big and early too. So
I just held my hands out in front of me, 24 inches apart, and now I'm making it 12 pounds in my mind, and I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah, it's a big baby. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You had a 3-year-old dog, is what you had.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. Like, I mean, my cousin has, twin girls, and I don't think they've even reached like 9 pounds yet, and they're like
combined
3 or 4 months old. But like, my mom had big children, and so she's not diabetic or anything. I just think there's more things that play into it, that why people have big babies. But that was my biggest thing. Oh, you're diabetic. Yep.
No one's ever said that to me before, that because I have diabetes, so my babies are bigger. I'm going to bring that up to Jenny next time I talk to Jenny. That's interesting.
Yeah, I always got that. They were just like, oh, well, I'm like, no, my A1C with my middle son was like in the 5% the whole time. And he was 10 pounds, 12 ounces.
I just think people don't know what they're talking about, and they just say it. You know what I mean?
They do.
Yeah,
they do. And I think that's my biggest reason of wanting to come on here, is just obviously sharing my experience with this disease and how it really does affect everybody differently, and just not pass judgment right away, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all done that at some point in our life. I mean, I'm guilty of it. But I think it's just the fact that it's becoming so much more, I don't know if common is the right word to use.
For people just to say things that they don't believe, they don't really know to be true. They're just willing to say out loud.
Yeah. Or just, just uneducated. Usually is
I hear what you're saying.
Biggest thing. Yeah.
People just like to blurt out the first thing that comes to their mind. And then there's a lot of anecdotal evidence in what people say sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I'm a fan of that, of knowing that that's true, and so that you can avoid it. I just last night had a person telling me, like, I'm trying to get a pump for my kid, and the doctor won't give it to me. And I was like, why? He said, they wouldn't say. I was like, well, just tell them you want a pump. I said, be persistent. Tell them I don't care. Just, I'm getting a pump for my kid now. Like, the kid's basal could support the pump. The kid's basal needs could support the pump. So there's no reason that they can't have it if they want it. And, just some arbitrary idea of, this is how we do it. Or, we don't give pumps out till you've had diabetes for a year because that's how we do it here. What is that about?
Is that's how it is around here, is like, I'm thinking in my head, okay, if one of my boys get it, they're going on a pump. They're old enough where they are going on a pump. There's no way in hell I'm doing, the other route.
It's the pot roast story, really. It's the little girl and her mom are making a pot roast, and the mom pulls the meat out, cuts both ends off it, puts it in the pan, sticks it in the oven. Daughter's inquisitive and asks why she cut the ends off the pot roast. The mom says she doesn't know. That's how my mom always made it. So they go find the grandmother and ask her why. And the grandmother said, I don't know. Like, that's just how my mom made it. So they went to the old folks' home and found the great grandmother and said, great grandmom, mom and grandmom say that you cut the ends off the pot roast, and I'm learning how to cook, and I'd like to know, why do we cut the ends off the pot roast? And the old lady thinks and thinks and thinks. She goes, oh yeah, I used to have a really short pan. And that's just how people's minds work. They start doing things for reasons they don't know why they're doing them. And at some point they start believing there's a really good, important, has to be reason why the ends get cut off the pot roast, or why you can't have an insulin pump for 12 months, or whatever other stupid thing that you get lulled into believing is a rule, because it's just been happening for so long you forgot to ask why.
Right. Yeah. So sure.
I hear you. Well, Ashley, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was really looking forward to this, and I'm like, God, I got to make sure I make it work this time. I just that first time around, and then I made sure, like, as if someone needs anything for my kids, I'm like, don't call me during this time.
Thank you.
Usually I'm a busy person, so I'm like,
I appreciate you taking that seriously. And for clarity, what you're talking about is that you're an hour behind me. And so I basically sat in front of my microphone for 15 minutes going, this girl's not coming. It's not.
I know, and I felt horrible. I'm like, God, he probably thinks I'm totally ditching him.
No, I don't.
And then I felt terrible. And then my husband's like, Ashley, I'm like, I know. I'm like, I didn't think about the time difference.
So I think my system handles it, but I don't think people, I just think it's common. Like you hear 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock and you think your time. You don't think somebody else's time.
Right.
It took me years doing this too.
Makes me feel better that other people, I'm not the only one.
You're not the first one, that's for certain.
Yeah.
And I know I can pivot away from it very quickly. I'm like, okay, seems like a time zone problem. We can redo this. Goodbye. And then I go back to my life. So you didn't hold me up or anything. I really appreciate this. Seriously.
Well, good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad we can make it work. And it was a pleasure being on here.
I'm glad. You had fun?
Yeah, for sure.
Good. Well, I want to wish you luck with school and
thank you. Yeah, it'll be a little challenging, I think, with having them all home, but we'll develop some kind of system.
Now you've got that closet downstairs. They could always just stay in that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
They'll be fine.
Yes.
They sound like tough
just
kids.
Put a desk in there, shut the door, and here you go to work.
They really do sound like tough kids. You could just put them on like a 20 or 30 foot lead maybe, and stake them so they could get outside, inside, reach a bathroom, go to school. I think they'll be fine. These kids sound tough to me. Seriously. Yeah,
just have a water dish there and some snacks.
You're a problem solver. You're a problem solver, Ashley. You know what to do. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
Of course. Did I not tell you Ashley was terrific? And did I lie? I did not. Thank you so much, Ashley, for coming on and being so honest and open and such a great conversationalist. Thank you to the Diabetes Pro Tip episodes of the Juicebox Podcast and the Defining Diabetes episodes of the Juicebox Podcast for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. I'm just kidding. Head over to diabetesprotip.com and get started today. And before the music ends, let me thank all of you for your support of the show. Seriously, amazing. Whether it's people in the private Facebook group helping each other, great reviews that are being left, how you're sharing the show with each other, subscribing in podcast apps, your support is seen and really appreciated.